The great hall of the pack house stretched like a cavern beneath the carved timber beams, shadows flickering against stone walls where centuries of leaders had once stood. The air was heavy with expectation, the scent of pine and burning torches mingling with the tension that pulsed like a heartbeat among the gathered pack. Tonight, the Alpha's choice would be made, and every eye was fixed on the tall figure at the dais. He stood there, jaw tight, shoulders rigid, the golden glow of the torchlight catching the edges of his dark hair. His name carried weight, fear, admiration, and unspoken longing, but the power he wielded came at a price. And tonight, that price would be paid in the form of a rejection that would shatter one heart forever. She stood at the edge of the hall, every instinct screaming at her to retreat, yet rooted by a mixture of hope and dread. The whispers of the pack brushed against her ears, some sympathetic, many tinged with judgment. She had spent years quietly watching him, longing for the one glance, the one recognition that might make her world right again. But tonight, that fragile dream would be torn apart. Alpha Callan, the elder announced, voice echoing across the hall, the mate must be chosen. A hush fell over the room. She felt her chest tighten, the warmth in her stomach flickering into icy dread. Callan's eyes, storm-dark and impossibly unreadable, swept over the assembled candidates. And then they rested on her. Her heart stuttered, her throat tightened, a whisper of hope brushing against the edges of her fear. But the Alpha's next words did not come for her. With alliances shifting, the pack needs strength above sentiment, Callan said, voice steady, commanding. I choose Tamsin. Her bond will secure the borders we need. Gasps rippled through the hall. She felt the world tilt. Tamsin's smug smile, the quiet satisfaction of a rival, sliced through her like a blade. Her legs trembled, her hands clenched at her sides. The firelight seemed to mock her, dancing over her tears before they could fall. Callan turned away, as if the very sight of her would stain the choice he had made. She wanted to speak, to shout, to claw back the shreds of dignity he had left her, but no sound escaped. The pack's eyes bore into her, some with pity, others with silent judgment. Her heart cracked, shattered by the man she had loved and the world that would never see her as more than a shadow at the edges of power. The torchlight flickered, shadows stretching long across the floor, and she realized, tonight, she had been cast aside. And yet, somewhere in the echo of the hall, a pulse of defiance stirred. Her chest burned with humiliation, yes, but also a quiet, simmering fire that would not be snuffed out, not by anyone. As Callan's figure receded into the shadows of the dais, she took the first trembling step toward a future she did not yet understand, unaware that destiny had already begun its quiet, relentless pull. Her chest still burned from Callan's rejection, the weight of the pack's gaze pressing against her like a physical force. She had retreated from the hall as soon as the ceremony ended, footsteps echoing against the cold stone corridors. Outside, the moon hung low, a silver sentinel in the night sky, casting pale light on the frost-kissed grass. Each breath drew in the crisp night air, sharp and unforgiving, yet it carried a strange clarity. She sank onto the fallen log near the edge of the forest, hugging her knees, and let herself feel the ache fully. Rejection wasn't just a word tonight, it was a fracture that ran through her bones, leaving her raw, vulnerable, invisible. Years of quiet longing, of patient hope, had collapsed in a single sentence. And yet, beneath the sorrow, a spark of anger flickered. She refused to disappear entirely. Not yet. A rustle in the underbrush made her stiffen, her senses sharpening. Wolves moved silently through the dark, but this wasn't the familiar sound of pack members patrolling. It was measured, deliberate, human. Don't sit in the shadows and let the world decide your worth, a voice said softly, almost a whisper carried by the wind. She jumped, heart hammering, spinning to see a figure emerging from the moonlight. Cloaked and hooded, the stranger's presence was commanding but not threatening, as if they had stepped out of a dream and into her despair. Who are you? She asked, voice trembling, not from fear, but the sudden surge of curiosity. A guide, perhaps, the figure said, voice low and resonant. Or maybe a reminder that destiny doesn't bend to the whims of power or pride. Her brow furrowed. Destiny? You mean? Callan. He decided who I was tonight. The stranger shook their head. He chose what he thought he wanted. That is not what you are. There is strength within you, hidden and waiting. The pack may not see it, yet. Her heart fluttered with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Could it be true? Could she hold more than the shadow of rejection? More than the silent witness to someone else's ambition? Before she could respond, the stranger's form blurred, melding with the darkness. She blinked, and they were gone, leaving only the faint scent of something wild and ancient, lingering in the night air. She swallowed hard, the spark within her now burning brighter. Callan had rejected her, yes. But someone, or something, was telling her that her story was far from over. Her destiny was calling. And perhaps, for the first time, she would answer it on her own terms. The moonlight glimmered off the frost, and with it came a strange, thrilling certainty. The night held secrets yet to be revealed, and the shadows were not empty. The forest had never felt so alive. Every leaf shimmered under the moon's silver gaze. Every shadow seemed to hum with whispered secrets. She walked among the trees, the night wind tangling her hair, lifting the ache of rejection from her chest, if only slightly. And yet, deep beneath the surface of her sorrow, something stirred, a warmth that was not there before, subtle but insistent. Her hands brushed against the bark of an ancient oak, gnarled and wise, and a shiver ran up her spine. There was power here. She could feel it, pulsing beneath her fingertips, as if the earth itself recognized her. She had always hidden it, denied it, afraid that any flicker of strength might make her more visible, and yet, here it was, undeniable and awakening. Focus, she whispered to herself, closing her eyes. A heartbeat. A pulse. Energy moved beneath her skin, quick and liquid, like fire in water. She imagined a simple act, a spark to light the darkness, and the air before her shimmered, trembling with possibility. She gasped, stumbling back. The forest around her had held its breath, waiting. And then a voice, not the stranger from before, but a voice she knew all too well, pierced the night. Why didn't you step forward when it mattered? Callan's voice was low, rough with regret, echoing through the clearing. She spun, heart clenching. He had followed her, across the frost and shadows, unseen until now. His dark eyes searched hers, fierce yet vulnerable, revealing a turmoil she had only glimpsed in fleeting moments before. You rejected me, she said, her voice trembling but steady. Not once, but twice. She faltered, the raw honesty of her words catching in her throat. Callan's jaw tightened. I chose what I thought the pack needed. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? She laughed bitterly, the sound breaking the night air. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You chose power over heart. For a moment, silence hung between them, thick as fog. Then, instinctively, she raised her hands again, willing the flicker of energy to bloom. A soft glow emanated from her palms, casting light on her face and startling even her. Callan's eyes widened, just slightly, just enough to betray the awe he tried to hide. What is this? He whispered. It's me, she said simply. Not the girl you see on the sidelines. Not the one you could reject. This is who I've always been, waiting for the moment to be seen. The forest seemed to pulse with her words, the wind carrying a hum that resonated in her chest. Callan stepped closer, hesitation and desire warring in his expression, but she held her ground. Callan, she said softly, voice firm now, I am no longer your shadow, and I will not be discarded again. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words failed him. She could see the struggle, the realization that his choice had consequences far deeper than he had imagined. She smiled faintly, a mixture of sorrow and newfound strength. For the first time, she felt untouchable, not because he feared her, but because she had finally claimed herself. The night wrapped around them like a secret, the unspoken tension humming between them, and she knew this was only the beginning. Her power had awakened, and Callan was no longer the one in control. The moon hung low over the pack's territory, spilling silver light across the glistening frost. Shadows stretched long between the trees, and the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the night to unfold. She moved through the familiar paths, her senses sharper than ever, every rustle and whisper amplified in the cold air. Her heart still carried the ache of rejection, but now it throbbed with something new, a quiet, insistent thrill that came from the knowledge of her power and the unspoken tension that lingered with Callan. The gathering by the riverbank was meant to be a routine inspection of the territory, but even in the quiet of the moonlit night, whispers circulated like wildfire. Eyes followed her, curious, judgmental, and sometimes wary. She felt them all, like invisible hands brushing against her, but she kept her head high, letting her newfound strength guide her steps. Callan was there, standing near the water's edge, his silhouette carved sharp by the moonlight. Every movement he made, every tilt of his head, seemed deliberate, calculated. But there was an edge of vulnerability beneath the alpha's composed exterior. His gaze found hers, fleeting yet undeniable, and for a moment the world seemed to narrow until it was only the two of them. "You're walking as if you own the forest," he murmured, his voice low, carrying across the frost-crisped air. "I've always walked here," she replied evenly, keeping her tone steady, though her chest tightened. "I just wasn't visible to everyone before." A faint, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, a mixture of regret and admiration. "You've changed," he said softly. "Stronger, bolder, dangerous." She met his gaze without flinching, a spark of defiance in her eyes. "Dangerous enough to remind you what you lost?" she asked, letting the words linger like smoke in the night. Callan's jaw tightened, and he took a measured step closer, though the distance between them remained, a line drawn by pride, guilt, and unspoken longing. Around them, the pack murmured, some exchanging glances and quiet gossip. Rumors were spreading faster than flames in dry grass. Everyone had sensed the shift. Something was different between them, something neither could yet name aloud. Her pulse quickened as he spoke again, voice husky. I didn't realize. I thought I made the right choice." "You made the choice that suited your ambition," she said, letting the truth cut through the night air. "Not the one your heart wanted." The words hung between them like frost, fragile yet sharp. And yet, in that same moment, something unspoken passed, a recognition, a pull, a forbidden connection neither could deny. Before either could speak again, a rustle of movement from the edge of the gathering drew their attention. A packmate, eyes wide with curiosity, had seen something, or perhaps, they had seen more than they should have. A ripple of tension slid through the group, and the air seemed to thicken with anticipation. Callan's gaze lingered on her longer than expected, conflicted, torn between duty and desire. She swallowed, feeling the weight of his look, the unspoken words pressing like a storm against her chest. The moonlight shimmered across the river, catching on the edges of frost and shadow, and she knew that tonight, everything had changed. The night was still, heavy with the scent of pine and frost, as she moved along the riverbank, the moonlight tracing silver paths across the rippling water. Her heart thudded unevenly, each beat echoing the pull she felt toward him. Callan had remained nearby, always just far enough to respect the distance, yet close enough that every subtle movement sent sparks through her veins. Their eyes met again, and the unspoken tension between them was a living thing, thrumming in the space that neither dared cross, until the moment stretched too thin to resist. A sudden gust of wind swept past, stirring the branches overhead. She turned instinctively, and he was there, closer now than ever, his presence a shadow wrapped in heat and authority. He reached out to steady her when her foot slipped on the frost-dusted stones. His hand brushed hers, a fleeting, electric contact that sent a shock straight through her chest. For a heartbeat, the world contracted to the small circle of skin between them. The warmth of his touch lingered longer than propriety allowed, fingers grazing hers with a careful intensity that spoke of restraint and desire. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said softly, voice low, yet laced with something she hadn't heard before, concern, longing, something almost intimate. "I'm not afraid," she replied, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "I can take care of myself." He studied her, his gaze piercing, as if he could see every hidden corner of her soul. "I know that." And yet, his hand hovered near hers again, the air between them charged with the heat of unspoken confessions. "And yet I feel compelled to protect you." She swallowed hard, torn between anger, longing, and the sting of the night's earlier betrayals. "Why now, Callan? Why now, when you've already chosen power over me?" The ghost of a smile tugged at his lips, conflicted and brief. "Because I was wrong. I see it now. I see you." Their fingers brushed once more, this time with no pretense, no caution. The touch was brief, but it carried all the weight of months of hidden feelings, quiet longing, and frustrated restraint. She felt the pull deep in her chest, a storm of emotion that left her trembling, breath caught between fear and desire. A sudden noise from the shadows, the snapping of a twig, pulled them apart instantly. Both turned sharply, alert, the spell broken. And yet, neither could deny the current that had surged between them, the forbidden intimacy that had been glimpsed and would not easily be forgotten. From the edge of the clearing, a pair of eyes watched, a rival, a wolf with ambitions of their own, keenly observant, noting every subtle glance, every brush of skin. A smirk curved their lips, calculating, dangerous. Whatever they had just witnessed, they would use. Callan's hand lingered near hers for a moment longer, before he stepped back, tension coiling in his shoulders. "We can't let anyone see," he said, voice husky, almost a whisper. "Not yet." She nodded, heart still hammering, knowing that what had passed between them was forbidden, but also inevitable. The night around them was alive with secrets and danger, and somewhere in the shadows, trouble had already begun to take shape. The river shimmered silver, the frost glinting like a warning. And in the space between them, desire and danger entwined, a promise that the forbidden would only grow stronger with every heartbeat. The packed council chambers smelled of smoke and polished wood, the torches flickering against walls lined with centuries of alpha portraits. Callan sat at the head of the long table, jaw tight, shoulders squared, a mask of authority in place. Around him, the council whispered, wolves with sharp eyes, sharper agendas, all pressing him to make the decisions that would secure alliances, territory, and power. And yet, in the hollow of his chest, a deeper conflict gnawed at him. Every decision felt like a choice between the life he should lead and the heart he secretly longed for. Every whisper reminded him of the girl he had rejected, the one who had quietly burned her way into his soul, who now radiated strength he could neither command nor deny. Her absence from the hall made the council's arguments sharper, harsher, the threat of rivals more tangible. "You must consider the East Ridge Treaty," one council member pressed, eyes cold. "Choosing sentiment over strategy could cost us the border, Alpha." Callan's fingers drummed against the polished wood, the sound sharp in the tense silence. "I know what's at stake," he said finally, voice controlled, though the storm inside him roared. "We secure the pack first. Always the pack." Meanwhile, far beyond the council chambers, she walked among the trees, the moon casting silver light on her path. The frost glinted under her feet, and she felt her power, quiet and growing, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath her skin. Every breath, every step, brought her closer to understanding what she was capable of. She no longer relied solely on the world to see her. She was discovering her own strength, her own voice, her own identity. Her mind wandered to the fleeting touch by the river, to the heat of Callan's fingers brushing hers, and a complicated surge of longing and defiance surged through her. She would not be the girl on the sidelines again. She would fight, not just for herself, but for the bond that had been denied before it could even bloom. Back in the council chambers, Callan excused himself abruptly, stepping out into the cold night. The wind hit him like a physical force, sharp and cleansing. He thought of her, standing alone in the forest, glowing faintly with power and determination. The pack's demands, the political chessboard, none of it mattered as much as the truth he could no longer deny. Yet pride and duty held him back. He had chosen ambition over heart once, and the regret was a knife that cut deeper than any enemy's fang. He knew that the path forward would demand more than words. He would have to reconcile power with the desire he could no longer ignore. She appeared at the edge of the clearing, eyes bright in the moonlight, and he froze, the tension between them raw and undeniable. "You're growing stronger," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "And you're finally seeing it," she replied, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "But seeing isn't enough, Callan. You chose before. Will you again?" The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of frost and promise. Their eyes met, a challenge and a pull, and in that moment, both understood the stakes. Power and heart would collide, and neither would be untouched by the consequences. The sun had barely kissed the horizon when the first signs of treachery revealed themselves. The pack house, usually a bastion of loyalty and order, hummed with uneasy whispers, each one heavier than the last. Callan had risen early, sensing the weight of unrest in the air, though even he could not anticipate the storm that was about to break. Her name came first, spoken in hushed tones, as if saying it aloud would summon danger. "She's gone missing," a younger wolf murmured, panic threading his words. I think someone took her." Callan's blood ran cold. His heart slammed in his chest, and for the first time since the rejection, fear overrode pride. He strode toward the council chamber, fists clenched, eyes blazing, every instinct screaming that the one he had cast aside, the girl who should have been at his side, was now in peril. "Who would dare?" he demanded, voice shaking only slightly, though the fury behind it was palpable. "Which of you betrayed us?" A council member, long considered loyal, stepped forward. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," the wolf said, eyes darting nervously. "We only meant to." "Only meant to what?" Callan's voice rose, echoing off the stone walls. "Hurt her. Endanger her. You knew what she meant to me." The betrayal cut sharper than any fang could. Trust, loyalty, everything he had counted on crumbled before him. And beneath the shock, a pang of guilt twisted his gut. He had rejected her once, publicly, and now that very choice had made her vulnerable. Meanwhile, she struggled in a hidden chamber, damp and cold, the scent of wolves and shadows surrounding her. Her hands glowed faintly, the energy she had been learning to control now a lifeline. She pressed herself against the wall, heart racing, knowing that only her wits and power could buy her a chance at freedom. "They think they can break me," she whispered, voice fierce despite the fear. "They don't know what I've become." Outside, Callan moved like a shadow through the forest, senses sharp, every nerve on high alert. The betrayal of his trusted council member had stung, but it fueled a determination that was fiercer than any pack politics. He would not let her be taken, not again. The moon rose high, casting silver light across the trees as he closed in on her location, guided by instincts honed over years of leadership and the unspoken bond between them. When he finally spotted her, hands bound but eyes blazing with defiance, something inside him shattered. The armor of pride, the walls of ambition, the barriers he had built around his heart. "Hold still," he growled, moving faster than she could react, and in a flash, she was free. The relief and fear collided in her chest, and she realized, with a shiver of both awe and gratitude, that this man, this alpha, had always been unwilling to let go, even when his pride demanded it. But as they ran through the frost-slick forest, shadows shifting around them, the danger was far from over. The traitor who had orchestrated her capture was still out there, and the price of betrayal had only just begun to reveal itself. Callan's hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers tangling instinctively, a wordless promise. No matter the politics, no matter the cost, she would not face this alone. And somewhere deep in the forest, eyes watched, calculating, waiting, as the storm of loyalty and treachery built toward a confrontation neither could escape. The cold stone walls pressed close around her, damp and unforgiving, as shadows stretched across the enemy stronghold. Every sound, the drip of water, the scuff of boots, the faint hiss of whispering voices, set her nerves on edge. She pressed her back to the wall, palms glowing faintly with the energy she had been learning to control, each pulse of light a small rebellion against the darkness that sought to cage her. Fear clawed at her chest, but it was tempered by determination. She would not be a victim. She was no longer the girl Callan had once dismissed. She was powerful, cunning, and fully aware of the danger that surrounded her. With every breath, she drew strength from the bond she had begun to feel with him, even if he didn't yet know how desperately he needed her as much as she needed him. Through the shadows, she sensed movement, subtle and deliberate. Wolves loyal to the enemy were patrolling, unaware that she was already anticipating their steps, her energy guiding her, making her almost invisible in the dim light. A thought flickered through her mind. I am caught between two worlds, the one I was born into, and the one I am shaping for myself. Outside, Callan's figure cut through the forest like a shadow, eyes blazing, muscles coiled, every sense alert to the threat his pack had failed to see. Guilt weighed on him, sharper than any blade. He had rejected her for power once, and that choice had led her into the clutches of enemies he should have anticipated. He clenched his fists, the winter wind whipping against his face. He would not make that mistake twice. Back inside, she focused her mind, calling forth the power she had only begun to understand. It thrummed beneath her skin, responding to her will, shaping the shadows and light around her. With a steadying breath, she moved through the corridors, every footstep silent, every heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of the building itself. Then, from the darkness, a figure emerged, a guard too slow to react to the sudden surge of her power. A soft pulse of light knocked him back, and she pressed on, heart hammering, knowing that escape was possible but only if she trusted herself completely. The bond between them, though distant, hummed beneath her consciousness. She imagined Callan's presence, his sharp instincts, his unwavering determination, and the image gave her courage. His coming. He won't let them hurt me. And I won't be powerless when he arrives. The forest outside the stronghold was a blur of white frost and black shadows as Callan closed the distance, senses straining. Every instinct screamed at him that she was close, that danger encircled her like a living thing. The thought of her in someone else's control, of the threat to her life, spurred him faster, each stride fueled by regret and desperate need. Inside, she reached a narrow window, frost-crusted and heavy, and pressed her glowing palms against it. The light pulsed stronger, pushing against the lock, and the wall of shadow wavered. Outside, Callan's sharp eyes caught the shimmer, a beacon guiding him to her. Their worlds, separated by stone and darkness, were converging. And when they finally met, it would be not just a rescue, but a reckoning of hearts, power, and the bond neither of them could deny. The forest trembled with tension as Callan moved like a shadow through the night, every muscle coiled, senses stretched to their limits. His pack, loyal and alert, flanked him in silence, but their presence was secondary to the one thought that consumed him. She had been endangered because of him. His choice, his pride, his ambition, all of it had led her into this web of betrayal. And now, there was no room for hesitation. The enemy stronghold loomed ahead, jagged against the silver glow of the moon. Within its walls, the traitor who had orchestrated her capture waited, confident, perhaps even smug. Callan's teeth clenched, the icy wind cutting against his face, a mirror to the fire raging in his chest. The pack's enemies had underestimated him. They had underestimated her. Inside the fortress, she crouched low, senses alive with the energy she now commanded. The faint glow from her hands illuminated the room as she prepared herself. Every step she had taken, every moment of rejection and humiliation, had forged her into something far more than the girl the Alpha had once dismissed. She was a force, and now she would not be denied. Footsteps echoed, he was near. Her heart beat in sync with the rhythm of her power, each pulse amplifying her courage. When the door slammed open, revealing the traitor, she didn't flinch. She raised her hands, and energy rippled outward, a shimmering shield of light and intent. The enemy staggered, unprepared for the force that had grown quietly in the girl they thought fragile. Callan's voice thundered through the hall, deep and commanding. "Step aside." His presence alone seemed to shift the air, tension radiating like heat off steel. Yet he didn't act alone. He needed her to fight beside him, not behind him. Together, they were a storm the pack had never seen. The traitor lunged, a knife glinting in the dim light, but she anticipated the movement, energy crackling along her limbs, guiding her reflexes. With a swift motion, she deflected the attack, sending the enemy sprawling. Callan moved in tandem, his strength a perfect complement to her newfound power. They were a unit, synchronized not just by strategy, but by an invisible bond that pulsed between them, a bond forged of pain, longing, and unspoken truth. The fight escalated, every strike and counter a testament to their growth. Callan's eyes never left hers, even as foes fell around them. He saw not the girl he had rejected, but the woman she had become, radiant with power and defiance. And in that recognition, something deeper awakened within him, an undeniable, aching need that went far beyond the Alpha's duty. Finally, the traitor fell, defeated and disarmed, yet the danger was far from over. From the shadows, other enemies stirred, their intentions clear. The pack would not be left unchallenged. She steadied herself, energy humming through her veins, aware that the battle had only begun. Callan stepped closer, hand brushing against hers, grounding her amidst the chaos. "We end this together," he said, voice raw, a mixture of fury and devotion. She nodded, pulse thrumming in tandem with his. "Together," she echoed, ready to face whatever darkness awaited. The night stretched on, heavy with tension, and somewhere in the murky shadows, the echoes of betrayal promised that the reckoning was far from over. The forest was quiet now, though the air still thrummed with tension, a lingering echo of the battles fought and betrayals confronted. Callan stood among the frost-kissed trees, his chest heaving from exertion, eyes scanning the shadows as if expecting another attack. Yet all the danger in the world seemed distant, eclipsed by the storm inside him, the truth he could no longer deny. She emerged from the clearing ahead, glowing faintly from the energy she had summoned, every step deliberate, radiating strength and defiance. His gaze followed her, heart caught between pride, longing, and regret. He had rejected her once, chosen ambition over desire, and for months he had lived with the weight of that choice. But now he understood what mattered. She's alive, he whispered to himself, voice rough. But it wasn't just her survival he marveled at, it was the fire in her eyes, the aura of someone who had grown unstoppable in his absence. She stopped a few feet away, frost glinting on her hair, breath visible in the cold night air. Callan, she said softly, the single word carrying years of hurt, hope, and unspoken longing. He stepped closer, boots crunching on the frost, and the wind seemed to hush around them. I was wrong, he admitted, voice trembling with emotion he had fought to contain. I let ambition blind me to what my heart already knew. I chose power over you, and You chose what you thought was right for the pack, she interrupted, voice steady, though her pulse thrummed in time with his. I understand. But it doesn't make it hurt any less. Callan's eyes softened, dark and intense, as he closed the remaining distance between them. I can't change the past, he murmured, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, fingers lingering just above her cheek. But I can choose the future. I can choose you. Always. Her chest swelled, a mixture of relief and longing twisting within her. She had imagined this moment countless times, wondered if he would ever see her as more than a shadow. And now, here he was, vulnerable, honest, and entirely hers if she would take him back. You're mine, he said, the words low and possessive, carrying the weight of a promise and the power of recognition. The mate I should have chosen from the start. The one I won't, live without. Her breath caught, heart pounding as the world narrowed until it was only the two of them, the alpha and the woman he had rejected but could no longer resist. She reached out, letting her hands rest on his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath her palms. A shiver ran through her as their energy mingled, a silent acknowledgement that their bond was no longer denied, no longer hidden. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of frost and promise. For the first time, danger felt like something they could face together. Every betrayal, every battle, every heartbreak had led them to this moment. Callan lowered his forehead to hers, eyes closing, voice soft but fierce. I lost you once. I'll never make that mistake again. She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief, desire, and fierce determination. Then don't. I'm not leaving you either. And beneath the moonlight, with the forest holding its breath around them, their hearts finally spoke the truth they had both denied for too long. The alpha had found his mate, and the bond between them was unbreakable. The wind howled through the trees like a chorus of warning, carrying the scent of smoke, frost, and battle. The enemy had regrouped, emboldened by the earlier chaos, and the forest trembled with the tension of an imminent clash. Callan's pack moved as one, a living storm of shadow and muscle, but at the center of it all stood her, radiant, powerful, and unyielding. Her hands glowed, energy coursing along her veins, a force she had only begun to understand fully. Every breath, every heartbeat, was synchronized with Callan's presence, the invisible bond between them pulsing like a second life. She had come too far to be a bystander, too far to remain in the shadows. Tonight, she would fight, not for power, not for recognition, but for the bond that had been denied and the love that had endured. Stay close. Callan barked, eyes scanning the tree line, muscles coiled for action. His voice was steady, commanding, yet beneath it lingered something unspoken, a need, a vulnerability he only allowed her to witness. They moved as one, weaving through the frost-covered ground, a blend of grace and raw power. Her energy surged outward, striking the first wave of enemy wolves with precise force, sending them sprawling into the underbrush. Callan was at her side, jaws snapping, claws slashing, his movements a perfect counterpoint to her ethereal strength. Together, they were a storm no foe could anticipate. In the midst of the battle, she felt his hand brush hers, not by accident, but deliberately, grounding them both, synchronizing their energy. The world contracted around that touch, and for a heartbeat, all the chaos faded. They weren't just fighting enemies, they were reclaiming what had been stolen, their bond, their destiny, their hearts. A rival alpha emerged from the shadows, teeth bared, claws ready. His presence was threatening, overwhelming, but she didn't falter. The energy she wielded flared, shimmering bright and wild, a reflection of every insult, every rejection, every moment she had been underestimated. She struck with precision, and the enemy faltered, eyes wide with disbelief. Callan moved in tandem, his strength amplifying hers, each attack seamless, each maneuver instinctual. In that moment, it wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a declaration. He had chosen her, she had claimed herself, and together they were unstoppable. The forest echoed with the sounds of growls, the clash of claws, and the pulse of her energy. When the final enemy fell, sprawled, and defeated, she stood tall, chest heaving, energy still radiating like a living flame. Callan's eyes found hers, dark with admiration, pride, and unspoken longing. He stepped forward, brushing frost from her hair, a hand lingering at her cheek. You've grown stronger than I ever imagined, he said, voice low, husky with awe. Stronger than me. She smiled, a mixture of exhaustion, triumph, and desire. I had to survive, she whispered, letting the words carry the weight of all she had endured. And I had to be seen, by you. Callan's lips brushed hers, a kiss both fierce and tender, sealing a bond forged in fire, betrayal, and triumph. Around them, the pack erupted in victorious howls, the forest alive with the echoes of their success. But even in that moment of triumph, a shadow lingered at the edges, a reminder that power, desire, and destiny were never fully tamed. They had survived, but the night was still alive with possibility, and their hearts beat in sync, ready for whatever came next. The clearing was bathed in moonlight, silver and serene, yet alive with the hum of celebration. The pack had gathered, their voices rising in unison, howls of triumph echoing across the frost-kissed forest. The battles were behind them. The betrayal had been exposed, the enemies defeated, and the bond that had been denied for so long was finally acknowledged. Callan stood at the center, tall, imposing, yet softened by the vulnerability he had learned to embrace. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on her, glowing faintly from the remnants of her power, every movement a declaration of strength and resilience. The world seemed to pause for that moment, the frost glinting like diamonds beneath the moonlight, as all eyes fell on them. She's mine, Callan announced, voice low but carrying across the gathering. Every head turned, every whisper stopped. The words were simple, yet heavier than any decree, heavier than any battle. They were the truth of his heart, public and undeniable. Her chest tightened, a mix of awe, relief, and desire swelling within her. For years, she had been unseen, dismissed, rejected. And now, the alpha of the pack, the one who had once chosen power over her, was acknowledging her openly, proudly, without hesitation. He stepped forward, closing the space between them, hand finding hers in the familiar, grounding touch. The pack knows who I should have chosen long ago, he murmured, voice rough with emotion. They see what I see. And I claim you as my mate, for all time. She let herself smile, letting the warmth of the moment wash over her. I accept, she said softly, fingers intertwining with his, feeling the steady pulse of his heartbeat beneath her palm. Not because I needed recognition, but because you finally see me, truly see me. The pack erupted into cheers, howls, and laughter, surrounding them with a living embrace of acceptance and loyalty. Allies and rivals alike witnessed the union, the alpha finally standing beside the mate he had once rejected, both of them stronger, wiser, and undeniably bound. Callan drew her close, forehead resting against hers, eyes closed as if memorizing the moment. I lost you once, he whispered, but I will never let it happen again. You are mine. Always. She pressed her hand to his chest, letting him feel the steady, unwavering thrum of her heart. And I'm yours, she replied, her voice carrying the confidence and strength of someone who had endured betrayal, danger, and rejection, and emerged more powerful than ever. The moonlight wrapped around them, painting their silhouettes with silver light. Around them, the pack celebrated, the forest alive with joy and the promise of a future forged in trust, love, and courage. They had survived betrayal, embraced power, and faced danger side by side. And now, as mates chosen and recognized, they would walk forward together, unbroken and unafraid. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a promise. Love that endures, hearts that align, and a destiny fulfilled under the watchful gaze of the moon. The alpha had chosen his mate, and nothing, neither time, shadow, nor rival, could ever change that.